Little bit. Recording is in progress. So this is the series of living being. Wow, and it's just so wonderful to be with you again today. It really is the all-time question ever since we had a consciousness to ask the question, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? We've been contemplating these questions in so many disciplines and fields. And two great fields are brought together in what I'll be sharing with you today in this contemplation. I took this image from images of the Sistine Chapel in Rome. Larry and I visited that chapel. And as many close-ups as we've seen of images in movies and in other places, when you go into that chapel, and some of you may have done that, some of you may have visited there, it's very crowded because you're there with multiple tourists, and all the paintings are at a distance. So you're looking up at the ceiling, and just straight above you is this image of God creating Adam. You see a little bit of Adam there. But the image we are focused on is the God image as Adam is created. This is Michelangelo's interpretation of what that spiritual event might look like in the classic Renaissance, Italian Renaissance style. And the verse is, then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. So here's a little bit about translating those words. Man refers to Adama, which is why man's name is Adam. It refers to Adama, which also means dust of the ground. It also means dirt, red ruddy dirt. And it also refers to man as human. The Lord God created human, not just male, as has been interpreted, but human. It's later in the chapter when human is split and becomes two, becomes male and female. And breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. In Hebrew, that word is nephesh, and nephesh refers to the very living spirit that is the livingness of our being. And my old religion professor used to say, this is really how it literally reads: God breathes nephesh into the earth substance, and humankind becomes living nephesh, the living breath of God. So each of us, we are made of the earth substance. Carl Sagan, of course, said star stuff because that's what the earth is made of. The earth is made of star stuff. Even the dirt has the very atoms that formed from a supernova countless eons ago. But we are made of that earth stuff and that nephesh, that spirit. So we are the spiritual livingness. We are the spiritual substance, living and alive. And it is an amazing, amazing thing to recognize that as part of our nature. Something else to recognize is if you look at the image of God, some of you may know this already, and the cloak of angels and cherubims that surrounds him. Is that a familiar shape at all when it comes to our biology? And feel free to speak up if I ask questions like that. What does that look like? Anybody have a thought on that? Look at the shape.
The brain.
The brain. Exactly. Well, you can see it there in the corner. You can see a side view of the brain in the corner. And many people have, or many scholars have felt that that was a very deliberate, artistic interpretation that God is really universal mind. And yeah, that Michelangelo was saying, even in the images he painted in the Sistine Chapel. All right, so our living beingness begins with mind. Now, early metaphysicians, the founders of our movement and their teachers, and early generations in unity, when they spoke of mind, they were speaking of all of our inner being, all of our inner being. So when they spoke of universal mind, they were speaking of the whole universe. God is the whole universe and more. Maya, you'll recognize this name. One of my great teachers, Ed Rabel, used to say God is greater than everything that is. Now, you may not call God God because God might be too personal a term. It might be too how can I say it, anthropomorphic, uh, for you to refer to God as God. You may call God spirit, universal presence, the divine. God has many names and titles, but basically it is this presence that we sense in ourselves as modern day mystics. Part of being a modern day mystic is to sense and feel the presence of God. It is to feel it in us and as us and greater. And I said it this way last year, greater than we know ourselves to be. Not greater than we are, but greater than we know ourselves to be, because the intellect can only go so far. But the mind is actually greater than the intellect. It reaches out into all that is. Okay. So I am discovering some empirical evidence, manifestation of our spirituality by studying a topic called neurotheology. Neurotheology. And neurotheology is the intersection between neuroscience and theology. Makes sense. Neuroscience being brain science and the effect it has on the neurons of the body. Where objective science is applied to subjective spiritual experience. And therein lies the challenge, and why neuroscientific studies are being done even unto this day. Because what the neurotheologist attempts to do is to demonstrate physically what we already know spiritually, and to see that it is actually happening inside our physical being. In New Thought terms, we say it is where the physical meets the metaphysical. All right. Wow. This is, by the way, this is as much like a class as it is like a talk. So I'll have some good talk elements in there for you too. All right. So we move to what is the brain? This is your brain. Okay. Consider that neurotheology starts with the basic premise that the brain is what helps us to have all our thoughts, feelings, and experiences, including those that are religious and spiritual. Okay, so the brain helps us. I believe, oops, not Andre Newberg. I misspelled it. It's Andrew Newberg. And oh, that's interesting that I put in the name Andre. I wonder why. Okay. So Andrew Newberg is a foremost is the foremost neurotheologian that we are aware of. He's both a theologian and a neuroscientist, and he has brought the two together, not just in studies that he has done, but in looking at what other people are doing. But he calls the brain a help. He doesn't call the brain the source. I want you to notice that. He doesn't call the brain the source. He calls the brain a help. And isn't that what our physical body and being is? Our
You muted yourself.
ah, sorry about that. Okay, I'll say that again. Our physical brain and body is the instrument of the spirit that it carries. Until we reach that point where we release the body and move into an expanded state of awareness. Some call that heaven. Heaven means expansion or raising up. Others just say we move into the light. In the Eastern context, it is samadhi. Samadhi is when you merge into all of it. And so there is this spirit that's forming itself, that concentrates itself, a spirit that concentrates itself as you, as you. And you become aware of this spirit through your mind, and it becomes useful in your world through the processes that occur in the physical manifestation of the brain. Okay, so this is your brain. Now, you remember the old, anybody might remember the old commercial, this is your brain on drugs, where they're frying eggs, you know. Yeah. This is your brain on drugs. Well, this is your brain, and this is your brain on God. Okay? This is your brain on God, literally, empirically. This is your brain on God. This is an MRI that it's a sample MRI that was taken of, I think, about 22 students at the University of Utah who were doing specific spiritual practices, and then going in and having this radiation MRI taken of their brains to see what was activated in the brain through prayer and meditation. And here you have the frontal lobe on the right, and notice the right side of the brain is pretty activated. That prefrontal cortex, all along its right side, is activated, and the right side is that feeling side. It's the heart side. It's where we get the how can I say it, the sense of connection with other people. It's also where we process our emotions and discern what it is we're going to say, what we're not going to say, what we're going to express, what we're not going to express. And then there's the left side of the brain, which is the very rational, logical thinking side. It's a little bit lit up, but not all that much. You see primarily the right side of the brain. And something else toward the back of the brain there, where you see it lit up, that's the center, the very center of the brain. And we are going to look at power centers. Two power centers coordinate with these specific areas. And that's what we are looking at today, plus one, which actually activates our whole being. And that one that actually activates our whole being activates the spiritual mind. I'm going to touch on the spiritual mind. So I had a vision. Well, it was a dream slash vision because I really felt it very strongly. I was in a sleeping state, but then was becoming conscious and aware of something that was happening visually to me in that sleeping state. I saw myself and others around me as this column of light in the universe. And the column had no bottom, it had no top. It just stretched out into infinity. And I was in this circle of columns of light, uh, where every column I knew was like a consciousness, an individual consciousness, stretching out into infinity. And then I felt myself become like a little shooting star, like a little ball of light, and felt myself silently falling, not in a bad way, but silently falling toward the earth. And then when I reached the earth, I fully woke up and was in my own body. So, what I got out of that dream was that we are that light. And that light forms itself like a little ball on this case, a spiral galaxy, but like a little ball as our own mind. And when we rely on the spiritual mind that lives in us, then we have all the guidance we need, everything we need to say or do, or anything that we are led to be. So those who are spiritual discern all things, and they are themselves subject to no one else's scrutiny. For who has known the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. From 1 Corinthians. Now it speaks of those who are unspiritual prior to this particular passage, to put it in context. But in referring to the unspiritual, it is actually just simply referring to those who are not aware of their spiritual nature. Those who are spiritual, as mystics, we're no more or less spiritual than anybody else. We're simply aware of our spiritual nature. All right. So we have what was distinguished by Unity metaphysical teachers decades ago as a trinity of mind. We have the superconscious mind, which is that mind that stretches out into infinity. It is the mind of Christ, the I am awareness. We have the conscious mind. This is your waking mind, your waking awareness. It's pivotal. And what I mean by pivotal is you can focus your conscious mind on the subconscious feelings you have and reactions and concepts and opinions and your default nature. You can focus it on that and live from that, or you can shift it to focus on the superconscious mind of infinite possibility. So the conscious mind is pivotal. It has that choice to go either way. And we have the subconscious mind, which is the storehouse of all of your experiences and everything you have learned. I assert that everything you have learned that is patterned into your brain right now as your subconscious mind is something that helped you somehow survive a moment or get through something. along the way. So it actually has served you at some point. But discernment is what helps you understand what it is you need now and don't need, just like our daily word said today, our daily word on elimination, which is a power we'll be getting to in a later talk. What to release, what to hold on to in your own mind. So superconscious mind, the spiritual mind; conscious mind, the pivotal waking mind; subconscious mind, the storehouse of all the stuff you have collected along the way. It's your default awareness. It's if you've ever felt thrown into a reaction, it just pops out because something stimulated it in your outer world. That's your subconscious mind at work. Now, I used this particular illustration of the 12 powers. I used a different one last year when I was with you and talked about the tree of life. But I used this particular illustration. This is off an old cover of the 12 powers of man. That's why it says the 12 powers of man and not just the 12 powers, by Charles Fillmore. And the reason I used this is because this was one of the initial illustrations of the power centers in our being. Here are the powers in order that we will be looking at them in these talks. Again, that's not the official order. The official order begins with faith, and that's our power of the month in January. But here is understanding. You see it in the front of the brain there. And where's imagination? In newer illustrations, imagination is the third eye, so they put it in the front of the brain. But the stimulating center of that third eye is actually in the center of the brain. And so I use this illustration to show right there, that little place right in the center of the brain, not the one below it, but that one is imagination. And these are the powers we're looking at. We're looking at understanding in the forefront. We're looking at imagination in the center. And all the way down in the solar plexus area. And again, modern versions say pit of the stomach, but it really started out as the solar plexus power center. All the way down the solar plexus area is wisdom. Now, we're going to start I didn't quite do this in order because I think we're going to start with wisdom, as I recall. Yep, we're going to start with wisdom. Wisdom, formerly called judgment, but judgment has taken on too many negative connotations. So wisdom is a good way to express this power. Wisdom. The mind power of the solar plexus. And I just want you to take a moment and go to your solar plexus and take a breath. The breath you take is the nephesh, the breath of spiritual being. And notice how it breathes in the fresh oxygen and breathes out the carbon dioxide that you no longer need. This is exactly how we breathe in our spiritual, what is good for our spiritual growth, and breathe out what we no longer need. And this is the ongoing process of wisdom. It is the power of judgment and discernment. It discerns what is for our highest good and releases the rest. And the practice is breath work. And the functional outcome is balance, clarity, and guidance. Okay, now I'm going to pause right now just to check in with you. How's everybody doing? There, I won't mute myself again. There we go. Everybody doing okay? Can you give me a thumbs up? Yep. All right, you following this so far? Good, good. Because this is a lot. This is a lot. This comes out of the months of study I've been doing since I left you last April. And the many studies I have read that back up that image of the brain. It's even stronger in some images, but they weren't reproducible. The prefrontal cortex, especially on the right side, gets very lit up in spiritual practice, as does the center of the brain. And here's what's happening there. We're going to look at our next power. Understanding. Okay, so wisdom activates, what does it? Oh, I didn't put it in there. Wisdom activates the superconscious mind through your breath work. When you do your breath work, your mind expands into the universe and your superconscious mind is activated. Science actually has demonstrated that breath work reduces stress, clears the mind, focuses it, and actually activates it in a way that is very beneficial and lights up those centers in our brain that do that. Here's understanding. It activates the conscious mind. It's in the front. It's in the prefrontal cortex. That is your conscious mind at work. Whether it's the left or right side, it's your conscious mind. It's your awakened awareness. The power center, prefrontal cortex, the ability to comprehend and to learn. And this is a little different than you may be learning in the 12 Powers class, but basically the result of how the power functions is the same. The ability to comprehend something is to wrap your awareness around it, comprehend it, to take it in, to assimilate it into your being. So you learn it, so you actually learn it. And this is the power of understanding. The practice to get there is contemplation and mindfulness. Your 12 Powers class says the practice is silence. Well, that's how we go into our deeper contemplation and mindfulness, is to quiet the thoughts. First, we ask the question of our inner being, then we quiet the thoughts. And the functional outcome is awareness, realization, and insight. And then the mind power of imagination. And I'm watching the time here. The mind power of imagination activates the subconscious. Now, it uses the conscious mind to do it, but it activates the subconscious. And that's in that center of your brain. In the center of your brain, here's what's located there: the amygdala. The amygdala is the part of your brain that creates those neural pathways that pattern things into your way of thinking and your belief system. It is that core of your belief system, and it's like these physical neural pathways move through your brain and get patterned in there. And really, it's our spiritual activity that can redirect any of the pathways we may not want when we have negative ways of thinking that we want to release. The thalamus, I think now some of you who are in medicine, please correct me if I say anything incomplete or inaccurate. Please correct me. And I'm trying to remember the function of the thalamus, but it actually has something to do. The thalamus and hippocampus have something to do with bringing the neurons together and sending the messages throughout your body. And all of this together is in the area of the nucleus accumbens, which is that center. All of these are part of the neurocenter that sends messages throughout your body and being that we call the limbic system. Anybody ever hear of the limbic system? If you're in medicine, I know you have. Yeah. So this is what your imagination works on. It works on your limbic system. What you see and visualize for yourself actually becomes a real experience in your body when you hold to it strongly enough. And then the function is embodiment. You actually feel it and sense it in the body. All right. So here is our lesson. This is our spiritual lesson of being today. Living being. Be wise. And how to be wise is to breathe and go to the heart. Some of you may have had the chaplain training that trains you to do this when you're with somebody, or even the medium training that I sat in on last year. You breathe. You take it to your intuitive heart. Breathe and go to the heart. And discern what you want. And what you want doesn't refer to something that's missing in your life, something that's wanting. What you want refers to what you choose to see in life, what you want to bring into being, either in your body or in life itself. Discern what you want, but do it through your connection with the superconscious, with all that you are. Be understanding. Contemplate what is so. And learn about it without, and I don't call it judgment. I don't say remove the judgment. I say remove the judgmentality. That's judgment that's limited to the intellect. When judgment is limited to the intellect, that's when it gets very judgmental. So you want to neutralize your judgment. Judgment is, the activity of judgment is bringing things into balance, into equality and equanimity. And so you want to neutralize that through learning what is so without the judgmentality and having that deeper understanding of its true spiritual nature. I could have put that in as a third point. Understand it from a spiritual perspective. And then finally, be imaginative. Visualize what is possible and keep that visualization going. That's why we make treasure maps. Anybody ever make a treasure map? It's to keep a vision in front of you until it is ingrained, until it gets patterned through your amygdala into your brain, until it gets ingrained in your consciousness and you actually feel it sending out those neural pathways in your body. Some of the studies that have been done, the spiritual studies, or the studies, the scientific studies that have been done on people of spiritual practice, have been done with people across the spiritual spectrum: Christianity, Buddhism, Islam. It's been done across the spiritual spectrum. And one thing that all of the people have in common is the lighting up, the greater blood flow to the prefrontal cortex and the activation of the neurons that produce things like dopamine and what's the other one? Is it melatonin? Anyway, they make you feel good. They make you feel good. So spiritual practice actually does activate those aspects of your neurosystem, because your brain and your body are there to help your spiritual mind. Remember, they are the instruments. They're not the source. The source is you, the very you that is in and beyond all physicality, and that extends into the whole universe. So we're going to take just a moment because I see our time is getting short. We're going to take just a moment. To breathe into the heart. And this is a quote from one of my writings: the wisdom of the heart is the light of the mind. And so take a deep breath and go to your heart. And I'm going to ask you to use your conscious mind, let your spiritual mind, let the conscious aspect of your spiritual mind be awake right now. As you think of a challenge or a condition or something in your life, an area in which you'd like to grow, or if you would just like to maintain the peace and equanimity of your present life, that's good too. Think of one particular area of your life. It can be a relationship, a job, the state of your body, your health, your finances, whatever. Ask your heart, what do I want? And why do I want it? What do I want? And why do I want it? What's the deeper spiritual purpose here? Just ask that of yourself. Tap into that inner wisdom. Come to understand who you are. And now imagine, use your visualization to imagine or feel and sense what that would feel like, what that would look like. And hold that image, that feeling for a moment. And take a deep breath. And consciously return to this moment. And that is how the mind and brain can serve the spirit of you, the nephesh that you are. You are the living spirit of God. You are the living spirit of God. That's what nephesh is in reference to. You are the living spirit of God as a living being. Okay. And so it is. And thank you, Maya. And